At exactly 7:13 a.m., the morning rush unfolded like any other at Westfield Elementary School in Dallas. Parents idled in carpool lines, backpacks bounced on tiny shoulders, and teachers waved greetings at sleepy-eyed students. Amid it all stood Sam UCHE, the 52-year-old school security guard, a quiet Nigerian American man with steady eyes and a thermos of warm tea in hand. He stood at his usual post by the gate, scanning the crowd with the same calm vigilance he practiced every morning. To most, he was invisible, a friendly nod, a familiar figure. But Sam noticed everything, and on this morning, something was wrong. A black sedan idled just outside the fence, engine humming. The driver, a man in a grey hoodie, sat, rigid, his eyes darting, twitching, to alert for this hour. Sam narrowed his gaze. Then it happened. Zara Collins, just 7 years old, walked toward the school gate alone, humming to herself, her pink backpack bouncing behind her. In a blur, the man leapt from his car, sprinted across the sidewalk, and snatched her. She screamed a sharp, high-pitched cry that sliced through the chatter of the morning. Sam dropped his thermos instantly. No hesitation. He ran with the force of a younger man, colliding with the abductor before he reached the curb. They crashed to the ground in a violent tangle. The man swung wildly, punching Sam hard across the face. Blood sprayed from Sam's nose, but he held on. He gripped the girl with one arm and wrestled with the other, teeth clenched in pain and determination. The struggle was messy, brutal. Seconds stretched into lifetimes. Teachers came running. Someone called the police. The man shoved Sam, scrambled back to his car, and sped off into traffic, but he left empty-handed. Zara collapsed into Sam's arms, sobbing but safe. Sam sat down slowly on the pavement, his face bloodied, arms trembling, cradling the little girl like she was his own. Around him, silence gave way to murmurs, then gasps. A mother whispered, "He saved her life." Another pulled out her phone, already recording. Sirens wailed in the distance. Sam didn't speak. He just held Zara tighter, as if letting go would undo everything. And then, as the crowd gathered, a voice cut through the noise. Come, low, prophetic. They called him a hero, but no one knew what this day would cost him. Samuel UCHE was the kind of man most people walked past without a second glance. Soft-spoken, always early, always at his post, he greeted parents and students with a quiet nod, rarely more. No one at Westfield Elementary knew much about him beyond the uniform and the dependable presence by the front gate. He never missed a day, never spoke unless spoken to. The children liked him. He remembered their names, fixed their backpack straps, and always stood a little straighter when the last bell rang. But when the day ended and the hallways emptied, Sam returned alone to a small, crumbling apartment on the east side of Dallas. The wallpaper peeled, the heater rattled, and the only sound most nights was the quiet hum of a radio playing old highlife music from home. What no one knew was that Sam had not always been this man. Once, decades earlier, in Lagos, he was full of promise. A young officer in the Nigerian military, he had dreams of leadership, of building something better for his country. He was married to a fierce, intelligent woman named Adaze, and they had a daughter, Amara, whose laughter made even the hardest days bearable. But everything changed during the protests. A political uprising turned violent, and in the chaos, Amara was snatched from Adi's hand in the crowd. Sam searched every hospital, every morgue, every police station. They never found her. Months later, Adaze died of a heart attack in her sleep, though Sam always believed it was a broken heart that killed her. After that, he left Nigeria, carrying only a duffel bag, a single photograph, and a grief that time refused to soften in America. He took jobs that required silence and discipline: warehouse security, night watch, grocery stocking. But it was the school guard position that brought something back to life in him. The laughter of children, the sound of tiny footsteps on pavement, it stirred something buried. He could never get Amara back, but here, at least, he could protect someone else's child. He took the job seriously, as if each school day were a mission. Quietly, fiercely, with no fanfare, until the morning Zara screamed. Meanwhile, in a sunlit home on the opposite side of town, the Collins family unraveled. Emily and Derek had built their lives around Gold's Law degrees, promotions, perfect pictures, but lately they'd been missing the small things. Their marriage, strained by ambition and resentment, had turned into a long list of silent dinners and misremembered commitments. The night before Zara's abduction attempt, they had argued again about Emily's late hours, Derek's distance, who forgot to schedule what. In the chaos of the morning, neither parent noticed their daughter had slipped out of the car alone. Hours later, Emily sat in the school's security office, watching grainy footage on loop. She watched the man leap from his car, watched Sam tackle him, take the punches, cradle Zara like a father. She broke down sobbing, hands shaking over her mouth. Derek stood beside her, stunned and still. He whispered, "That man did what I failed to do." Neither spoke for a long time. All they could do was watch it again, this stranger, this quiet guard, stepping into the breach without hesitation, without question. Because somewhere, in a hidden part of his soul, Sam UCHE had been waiting for that moment his whole life. Within hours, the grainy school surveillance footage had made its way from the district office to the evening news. By morning, it was everywhere. TV screens, phones, news feeds. Samuel UCHE tackling a would-be kidnapper, shielding a terrified little girl, bleeding but unflinching. Headlines called him the Guardian of Westfield Elementary and Dallas's quiet hero. Interviews were requested. Hashtags trended. Strangers sent thank you cards to the school. But Sam remained the same stoic, quiet, arriving early, as always, his thermos in hand, uncomfortable with the sudden attention. When Emily Collins walked into the school 2 days later, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, Sam blinked at her like she was from another planet. "For you," she said softly, pressing the flowers into his hands. "There's no way to say thank you big enough, but I needed to try." Sam nodded, unsure what to do with the gesture. He held the flowers awkwardly and murmured, "I'm just glad she's safe." Still, something shifted in his eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper. The moment was quiet, tender, but it wouldn't last. That same afternoon, the principal called Sam into the office. Her tone changed eyes, cautious. "The district received a complaint," she said, not meeting his gaze. "A parent wants to know how you reacted so fast. They're asking if you knew the suspect." The words hung heavy. Sam's brow furrowed in confusion, then slowly darkened with something heavier hurt. "I ran because I saw a child in danger," he said plainly. "That's all." But it didn't stop there. The district's legal team began digging standard protocol, they claimed. They found a red flag: Sam's immigration paperwork. His temporary work visa, issued after a legal mishap years ago, was technically active but under review. A bureaucratic tangle he had tried to fix quietly. Now, it was ammunition. Within 48 hours of being hailed a hero, Sam UCHE was suspended from duty, pending a formal investigation. No warning, no explanation to the children who looked for him at the gate the next morning, just silence where he used to stand. When Emily heard the news, she was livid. "You're punishing the man who saved her," she shouted at the district board during a call. Derek stood in the kitchen later, arms folded, voice low. "It's not our business, Em. We should stay out of it." But she spun to face him, eyes blazing. "He saved our daughter. Now it is." The tide turned faster than anyone expected. One moment, Sam UCHE was a celebrated hero. The next, he was a trending headline shrouded in doubt. Social media, once flooded with praise, began to shift. Anonymous posts surfaced. Is the guard really a hero? How did he react so fast? Was it staged? Why is he even here illegally? Comment sections grew vicious. Someone uncovered old military records from Nigeria, where Sam had once served during a government crackdown in a Bujan operation, long shrouded in controversy. Context was lost. His discipline became aggression. His silence became suspicion. Photos of him in uniform were circulated alongside inflammatory captions. He was no longer Sam, the quiet protector. He was suddenly unstable, dangerous, a threat. The school district, already uncomfortable with the spotlight, doubled down on its suspension. No charges were filed, but the whispers were enough. Emily couldn't stay silent. She drove to Sam's apartment unannounced one afternoon, parking beside the cracked sidewalk and climbing 3 flights of stairs. When he opened the door, she paused. The space was bare, neat, but cold. No television, no furniture beyond a chair, a table, a mattress on the floor. But the walls were lined with photographs. Children, dozens of them. None were his. She turned, slowly, confused. Sam noticed. There from the center, he said quietly. The kids I tutor. Some of them don't speak English yet. I help them with reading, and with what the world forgets. She blinked back tears, suddenly aware of how much she hadn't known. I didn't come to pry, she said. I just needed to say what they're doing to you isn't right. He shook his head. It's not new, just louder this time. Later that night, Emily sat on the couch, her laptop open, Zara asleep upstairs. She looked at Derek, who was pacing with frustration. You want to hire him a lawyer now? He asked, exasperated. This is immigration, Em. It's a mess. We don't even know him. She looked up slowly. You know what I remember about that morning, she said, her voice tight. We were arguing. I forgot to walk Zara in. He didn't. That ended the conversation. She emailed 3 attorneys before midnight. Somewhere, buried under the pressure, memories stirred some as a younger man. 20 years earlier, gripping his daughter Amara's small hand as they crossed the street in Lagos. Her giggle, her pink hair ties, her hand slipping from his the day she vanished. He'd never let go of that moment. Not in his body, not in his soul. Protecting children wasn't just work, it was penance. Emily launched an online petition the next morning. Reinstate Sam. Protect our protectors. Within hours, it spread. Parents, teachers, and community leaders signed. People who had never spoken to Sam were now writing testimonies. He walked my son in when I was running late. He repaired the back gate himself. My daughter calls him her guardian angel. A local reporter picked up the story and went deeper. What she uncovered stunned even Emily. Sam had been quietly sending nearly half his modest salary each month to grassroots rescue organizations in Nigeria that tracked abducted girls. He funds search teams. The article read, he never stopped looking, not really. The pressure on the school board mounted. News vans returned. Supporters rallied outside the school with signs. But as the spotlight grew, so did the complications. The immigration department, now alerted, opened a formal review of Sam's visa. The phrasing was bureaucratic, but the intent was clear. He was at risk of deportation. His suspension turned indefinite. The youth center where he volunteered stopped assigning him hours. Parents grew divided. Some feared the backlash. Others doubled down in support. Through it all, Sam remained silent, steady, watching it unfold like a man who had seen it all before. He didn't ask for help, but this time he wasn't alone. Emily stood beside him, and her voice was only getting louder. The school auditorium was packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Cameras lined the back wall. Parents filled every seat, murmuring as the school board called the public hearing to order. On one side sat supporters holding signs, "Protect our protector." Sam is a hero, on the other. A smaller but vocal group of skeptics who whispered words like security risk and immigration violation. At the center of it all sat Sam UCHE, quiet and composed, his hands folded in his lap, his face unreadable. He wore the same navy jacket he always wore to work, though today it looked less like a uniform and more like armor. When his name was called, the district lawyer stood to read from his file. "No criminal record," she stated. 3 years of employment with Westfield Elementary. Multiple letters of commendation. Suspended not for misconduct, but for unresolved immigration complications. She paused, letting that hang in the air. One by one, parents stepped up to the microphone. Some spoke with tears, others with fire. "He walked my child in every morning when I was working double shifts." He stopped that man without thinking. How many of us could have done the same? A father cleared his throat and added, "We say we want people who contribute, who show up." Well, this man bled on our pavement for someone else's child. What more does he need to prove? Still, a few dissenters remained. One woman expressed concern. "It's not about what he did. It's about legality. What kind of message are we sending?" Then Emily stood, holding a small piece of lined paper in her hands. She walked to the front of the room and unfolded it with care. "This is from my daughter," she said softly. Zara wanted to say something herself. Her voice trembled as she read. "Mr. Sam saved me. He's my hero. I want him to come back. I love him." The room went still. Some wiped tears. Others looked down, ashamed of their doubt. Finally, Sam stood. He stepped to the podium slowly, gripping its sides like a man weathering a storm. His voice was quiet but sure. "I did what any father would do," he said. "I couldn't save my daughter, but I could save yours. That's all I ever wanted, to protect, to be useful, to stand in the gap." There was no drama in his tone, only truth. It landed like thunder in the silence. At the back of the room, Derek stood abruptly. He hadn't spoken all evening, but now he walked up to the front and stood beside his wife. "We owe him more than words," he said simply. "We owe him a future." The school board murmured among themselves, then called for a vote. The results were unanimous. Sam UCHE was reinstated as the school's head security officer, effective immediately. Applause erupted. People stood. Sam looked stunned for the first time that night. But the celebration was cut short when 2 plainclothes ICE officers appeared at the exit, stone-faced, waiting. The tension snapped back in an instant. Before they could speak, Emily and Derek's attorney, retained quietly in the days before, stepped forward with a thick folder. "We're filing an emergency stay," he announced, "based on Mr. UCHE's heroism, community service, and clear threat of undue harm if deported." The officers paused, exchanging looks. One stepped aside to make a call. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, they nodded once. "We'll hold," one said. "For now." As Sam walked out of the building, flanked by applause and handshakes, his eyes met Zara's across the crowd. She smiled wide and waved. And for the first time in years, Sam allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had saved more than one life that day. Maybe he had saved his own. In the weeks that followed the hearing, Sam was reinstated at Westfield Elementary on a provisional basis, while his immigration case was formally reviewed. Though the future was still uncertain, there was hope, now a kind he hadn't felt in decades. The biggest surprise came when Emily and Derek approached him after a school meeting and offered to sponsor him for permanent residency. Sam was stunned, the weight of their gesture hitting harder than any headline or hearing. "You didn't have to," he murmured. Derek extended a hand. "We wanted to." It was the beginning of something unexpected, a quiet, meaningful friendship built not on pity, but on mutual respect. Emily connected him with a trusted immigration lawyer, one who didn't just see a case file, but a life worth fighting for. Derek, more reserved, pulled Sam aside one evening after school and said, I judged you too quickly. I was wrong. I'm sorry." Sam simply nodded, but his eyes said more than words could. One quiet afternoon, in the school staff room, Sam sat alone, laptop open, staring at the face of an elderly woman across the screen. Amara's former caseworker in Nigeria. After the story made international headlines, she reached out, moved by the footage of the girls Sam had saved. On that call, her voice was gentle, careful. "There's something I never got to tell you," she said. She explained that a girl's remains had been found years ago, but due to poor records and lack of DNA confirmation, the body was never matched. After reviewing the old files, the case had now been quietly closed. Sam listened without blinking, his throat tight, the words unraveling 20 years of quiet ache. When the call ended, he sat motionless for a long time, then broke. The tears came hard, raw, years in the making. Emily, passing by the door, stepped in and saw him collapsed in the chair, shoulders shaking. She placed a hand on his back and said gently, "You saved someone else's little girl." Maybe that's what she would have wanted. Sam didn't reply, but in that moment, he let himself believe it might be true. Inspired by everything they had endured, Sam, Emily, and Derek founded a small non-profit Together Safe Steps. Its mission was simple but powerful: to train schools on security protocols, provide emotional care for staff, and advocate for immigrant workers often overlooked in public systems. Sam became the face of the organization, not as a victim or a savior, but as something deeper, guardian, who had once lost everything and found purpose again, one child, one act of courage at a time. Months later, the morning sun spilled gold. Across the playground, Azara came racing through the school gates, arms wide, her pink backpack bouncing behind her. "Mr. Sam," she squealed, leaping into his arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sam caught her with a soft laugh, lifting her gently before setting her down with a pat on the head. Around them, the school buzzed with life kids, laughing, parents waving, teachers greeting students. But for a moment, it all faded into something quieter, more sacred. His legal status had finally been secured weeks earlier. The paperwork was signed, sealed, and no longer a shadow over his days. On the wall, inside the front office, pinned to a corkboard, was a handmade card from the students with bright crayon lettering. "Thank you for being our hero." Beside it, a framed photo showed Sam standing with Zara, Emily, Derek, and the team behind Safe Steps, all smiling under a banner that read, "Protecting Every Step." As the final bell rang that day and the last student was picked up, Sam walked the perimeter of the school grounds one last time, like he always did, checking every door, every gate. When he reached the front entrance, he pulled the chain through the gate and clicked the lock shut. The street was quiet now. A breeze rustled the trees. He paused, looking up at the building, this place that had once been just another job, but had become his second chance. With a soft breath, he whispered to himself, "This time, I didn't fail her." Then he turned, his shadow stretching behind him, and walked into the falling light, not as a man haunted by loss, but as